By the mid-70s, the Beach Boys were a big draw as a live act, but in reality had become a show band who churned out the oldies, the surfing and car songs to huge crowds. The band were creatively bankrupt and hadn't released any new material for years. This exasperated Carl and burgeoning songwriter Dennis, and a division grew.
Between Dennis and Carl, they pretty much wanted to go in a direction of continuing to push the edge, whatever edge there was going to be with the Beach Boys, continuing Brian's legacy. Then you had Al and Mike, who tended to more want to milk the cash cow.
It was just the typical things. Mike wanted to take care of business with the band, and Dennis just wanted to be Dennis. And so they just had all grown apart creatively. You know, I don't know if they were ever on the same page. Dennis would never come to a business meeting. He would never go to board directors meeting for the Beach Boys. He would never do anything that would remotely benefit him financially. And he did everything in his power to derail financial things, which of course drove Mike Love nuts.
In September 1977, Dennis shocked the band by becoming the first Beach Boy to release a solo album, something not even Brian had done.
His first album called Pacific Ocean Blue. And had he been able to maintain his personal equilibrium, I think he would have been a major recording star in his own right.
Dennis would just grab me because he'd be creative late at night. You know, Karen would piss him off or something would happen, you know, and he just wanted to, you know, he wanted to record. He wasn't going to let anything stand in his way. So, and he was very engaging. He was very positive and he took chances. He was in the zone. I mean, he was extremely focused when he was in the room. He'd spend weekends, Fridays and Saturday nights, working late. There was no place he'd rather be. I never saw him agonize over it. It never looked like work.
The album was a modest success, but Dennis didn't seize the opportunity.
Hi, my name is Dennis Wilson. I make rock and roll records. I've had a career of 15 years making records, hit records with the Beach Boys. I just try to relate an experience to the feeling. The closer I get to the studio, the more fun I have. The idea of making people happy or smile, it's like a drug, I guess. Some people are addicted to alcohol, others to whatever it may be. I'm addicted to looking at that person and knowing that they're entertained.
He was frightened by the possibility of having to go out without the Beach Boys there by his side, to have to go out as just Dennis Wilson and do that music.
As his fears and his addictions took control of him again, Dennis lost everything. His marriage to Karen broke up, and his beloved boat was repossessed.
Dennis, maybe you'd like to start this off. Why do you think that you've had such, continued popularity? Dennis?
Dennis.
Good morning, Dennis. I know it's early there. You guys, what do you think, really though, why do you think that you've continued to be so popular over so many years?
Well, it's the music, obviously.
Dennis showed up for Beach Boys concerts drunk and barely able to function. In 1979, he was fired from the band.
They thought if they cut off all of his means of income and put him out from the Beach Boys, that it would really cause him to turn around.
Both Mike and Carl released solo albums. Carl even went out on his own tour.
I was passionate about rhythm and blues music as a kid, and it was a big influence on the first solo album I made. I found out that there was a lot of rock and roll inside that kind of wanted to get out of me. And the part of me that likes to rock and be rambunctious, was a thing that I had been sort of suppressing, because in the Beach Boys, my role has been very laid back.
By 1980, Mike Love and Al Jardine were the only Beach Boys at some of the group's concerts. Dennis straightened out for a while and was allowed to rejoin the band in 1981. But his sobriety didn't last long.
I gotta really whine the shit out of it. Whine.
Express purpose. Time in the recording studio is only part of what goes into the making of the music. Each song has a story of its own.
Come out with several songs, one of which is Going to the Beach. The interesting thing about that is, I was just walking back from the beach one day, and I was just going to the beach, going to the beach. And I thought, oh, God, we got to do a song called Going to the Beach. It's so direct, you know? So we did. We got back, and I played it for Carl. He did a demo on the guitar, and then we came up with vocals. We worked on it up at Big Sur, and we did a lot of work on it, recording and so on. And we sometimes worked for many, many, many hours and days on songs getting it right. I'll sing it, and you
Backwards, but not three-part.
Okay, fine. Let's sing. Let's figure out what to do so we can get the other guys going on here. Okay. I'll sing the melody, and you figure out.
I think you should go. Should we go like?
Go to the beach, my baby. Well, I'll be going to the beach with my girl. Stay out partying all night long, but I'll be up just as soon as it's done, 'cause I'll be good.
Let's see how that again. 3, go.
I'll stay out partying all night long, but I'll be up just as soon as it's
Like that?
done. Yeah. Yeah, sure. All right.
Okay, here we go.
I'm trying to figure some back out.
Without Dr. Landy, Brian also fell off the wagon. In November 1982, Brian was fired by the other band members. Carl hoped the move would convince Brian to get help.
Carl had to sacrifice his day-to-day relationship with his brother and be the bad guy in order to save his life.
Carl's gamble paid off. Brian went back to Dr. Landy. This time, Landy monitored Brian 24 hours a day and controlled every aspect of his life. Landy even had Brian move into a new home with several of his aides.
He had a year or two to live, and he'd have died. Tom Hewlett called me in and said, we are worried that Brian Wilson is going to follow Elvis.
Oh, God, no.
Yeah, that's what Tom said to me. He said, we've got to do something. We can't let him just stay 300 pounds. Didn't you know that?
We're so fortunate that Brian Wilson's with us today.
In 1983, Interior Secretary James Watt banned the Beach Boys from performing on the Washington Mall on Independence Day. He said they attracted the wrong element.
We know what we want to do. We're all much more mature. We've made our mistakes. The fragmentation didn't work. The specialization doesn't work as well as the togetherness of the group.
Over the last 3 years, as many as 500,000 people converged on the Washington Monument to celebrate America's birthday. The Beach Boys were the main event for 2 of those years, but Interior Secretary James Watt says the Beach Boys are a hard rock band and inappropriate for the 4th of July. The reason for the trouble, according to Watt, is that rock bands were attracting the wrong element.
I've just called in Ambassador Phil Habib to settle the Jim Watt Beach Boy controversy.
By the way, I've learned about the Beach Boys in the last 12 hours, and we'll look forward to having them here in Washington to entertain us again.
After the White House appearance, Dennis married the teenage mother of his infant son, Gage. The girl called herself Shawn Love. In 1964, she'd been the focus of a paternity suit against Mike Love. Though a court found Shawn was not Love's daughter, she still used his name. Shawn's past didn't deter Dennis.
I think maybe it intensified things a bit when he realized who she was, but he certainly began the relationship and was attracted to her before he was aware of it. But I definitely think that it did contribute, that he loved being able to stick it to Mike and that she was such a free spirit.
Once the group's sex symbol, Dennis was a sad shell of his former self. His body was battered and bloated, while his voice was little more than a croak.
To be up here singing and playing, you know, in front of you, the joy it brings to us. Thank you so much.
I remember one time hearing him sing You Are So Beautiful, that Joe Cocker song, that, and when his voice was all gone like that.
God bless you. The Beach Boys.
It was hard to hear, and, you know, brought out reality of certain things. But, you know, I mean, that was my first, like, real, like, God, Dad, what's going on?
Because of his disruptive behavior, Dennis was banned from Beach Boys concerts, but he kept showing up anyway.
The last time that he ever got on stage with the Beach Boys was at the county fair in Los Angeles, and he stood there at the back of the stage tossing things at them up on stage, trying to get them to ask him to come up, and eventually Carl asked him to come up and play drums for one song, but it really did break his heart.
Without income from touring, Dennis was drained of cash and unable to pay his rent. In November 1983, Dennis Wilson became homeless. On December 28th, Dennis was staying on a friend's boat in Marina del Rey, at the same dock where his own beloved Harmony was once moored. Dennis dove into the cold, murky water in the empty slip where Harmony had been docked. He brought up items he'd thrown overboard. Then, he didn't come up at all.
Today, his fellow band members commented on the loss of their brother and friend, calling Dennis Wilson one of the most sensitive and gifted musicians in pop music. Dennis Wilson, dead at the age of 39.
The Wilson family received special permission from President Reagan to bury Dennis at sea off the coast of California.
Almost from the moment that I met Dennis, I knew that he wasn't going to die of old age. It was just how he would die or when he would die.
Dennis was I don't even know what to use the term. I mean, he was an event.
Dennis Wilson, the wild card, but on the other hand, one of the most sensitive people in the band.
And he always had a fast car, and he lived on a 45-degree angle. He was always ready to smash into a wall somewhere, and he always did. Always did.
I remember one time diving off the steel pier in Atlantic City when in the early days of our friendship, and thinking, my God, what the hell did I do, as we were halfway in from the pier, and calling out to him and saying, Dennis, I don't think I can make it. He said, the ocean can never hurt you. And all you have to do is just paddle. He said, just let yourself get in with the motion of the ocean. And he said, just be patient with it. It'll take you way the hell out. It'll always bring you back in. So when I first heard it, I thought, drown? No, it's impossible, you know, but I mean, who knows?
Dennis Wilson was gone, but the band played on.
I think that they just pretty much went on because they had already had a mindset to move on without him, in that he had been fired before that anyway.
In 1985, the Beach Boys played to their biggest audience yet, helping President Reagan celebrate his second inauguration.
It got big again when the Reagan administration invited us to play. I mean, there were 500,000 people there, and it was in the papers.
In the 80s, I believe that the Beach Boys became a touring group. I would say that those people who went to those performances were hoping to rekindle what they knew the Beach Boys represented in their lives at an earlier period.
It was to me, see, Carl might feel a certain way about things, and I feel approximately the same way, in that it fulfills a need. You know, we like to entertain people. That's how we were born to entertain people, right? So we have that built-in need to entertain. So we never stop. There's no stopping. You know, we started out 25 years ago, and we're still going at the same speed.
By the mid-70s, the Beach Boys were a big draw as a live act, but in reality had become a show band who churned out the oldies, the surfing and car songs, to huge crowds. The band were creatively bankrupt and hadn't released any new material for years. This exasperated Carl and burgeoning songwriter
Maintained his personal equilibrium. I think he would have been a major recording star in his own right.
Dennis would just grab me because he'd be creative late at night. You know, Karen would piss him off or something would happen, you know, and he just wanted to, you know, he wanted to record. He wasn't going to let anything stand in his way. So, and he was very engaging. He was very...
It was just the typical things. Mike wanted to take care of business with the band, and Dennis just wanted to be Dennis. And so they just had all grown apart creatively. You know, I don't know if they were ever on the same page. Dennis would never come to a business meeting. He would never go to board directors meeting for the Beach Boys. He would never do anything that would remotely benefit him financially. And he did everything in his power to derail financial things, which of course drove Mike Love nuts.
In September 1977, Dennis shocked the band by becoming the first Beach Boy to release a solo album, something not even Brian had done.
His first album called Pacific Ocean Blue. And had he been able to make...
Dennis, and a division grew.
Between Dennis and Carl, they pretty much wanted to go in a direction of continuing to push the edge, whatever edge there was going to be with the Beach Boys, continuing Brian's legacy. Then you had Al and Mike, who tended to more want to milk the cash cow